Okay, great. Okay, it is 10 a.m.
Okay, this is the November 3rd, 2022 meeting of the Mountain Line Technical Advisory Committee. I'm calling this meeting to order at 10 o'clock a.m. And Rhonda, will you do roll call?
Thank you, Chairman and members of the TAC. Coconino County, Tiffany Kerr.
Present.
Thank you. Coconino County Citizen Representative, Jillian Thomas.
Present.
Thank you. We also have her alternate, Carol Covington, with us.
Also present.
Thank you. City of Flagstaff, Greg Clifton. I don't believe he is with us yet, but he is expected. One moment. City of Flagstaff Citizen Representative Michelle James.
Here.
Thank you. Metro Plan, Jeff Meilbeck.
Here.
Thank you. NAU, Aaron Stone.
Here.
Thank you. We also have her alternate, Brian Ecoff.
I told Brian, so I think Brian was confused. I let him know he's got 4 drivers out today. And so I think he thought he had to attend all the meetings. I told him he's my backup. So I did tell him if he needed to go, he could go. So he did step out.
Okay, thank you. All right. NAU Student Representative Brendan Trashel is expected, but have not seen him join yet.
Present.
He isn't? Oh, present. I'm sorry, Brendan. Thank you. CCC Kurt Stull.
Good morning, present.
Good morning. And our Economic Development Citizen Representative Gail Jackson is excused. We have Chris Beecher, our Mountain Line attorney, on the line with us.
Good morning, everybody.
And our guest presenter, Robert Weber from the city of Sedona.
Good morning, all.
Good morning. And we have staff here in the Vera room at Mountain Line and on Zoom. And I'll turn it back to you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Rhonda. Item number 3, safety minute. Sam Short, safety manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Transit Advisory Committee. So the second November Safety Minute is on driving in a winter storm, which is perfectly timed for today. So driving in winter storms can be harrowing, especially in snowstorms and icy conditions. By getting your car ready for winter and using some simple tips to drive safely, you can face almost any weather Mother Nature decides to send your way. Here are a few tips to help you drive safely while in a winter or snowstorm. If possible, do not try to stop while going up or down a hill. While driving on a grade, you should significantly reduce your speed in case you need to stop. If your vehicle starts to skid or slide, steer into the direction of the skid or slide. This will help you to stay in your lane without overcorrecting. Increase your following distance by 8 to 10 seconds. Accelerate and decelerate as slow as you possibly can. Increasing your following distance will assist you greatly with this. Avoid using cruise control in any storm conditions. If visibility is severely limited, pull off the road to a safe place and do not drive until conditions improve. Avoid pulling off onto the shoulder unless it's an absolute emergency. Limited visibility means other vehicles can't see yours on the shoulder of the road. Please follow these simple steps to keep yourself safe today during our first major winter storm of the year. Thank you and welcome to the November Transit Advisory Committee meeting.
Thank you, Sam. Item number 4, call to the public. Rhonda, do we have anyone in the public who wants to speak?
There are no members of the public. I would like to let you know that member Greg Clifton from the city of Flagstaff has joined us.
Great, welcome, Greg. All right, item number 5, approve TAC minutes of September 1st, 2022. Would anybody like to make a motion or begin discussion?
This is Erin. I didn't have anything for discussion, but I wanted to give people time if they did, so I would make a motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion from Aaron, and is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second from Tiffany Kerr. Any discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved. Moving on to item number 6, the Sedona Transit presentation. Welcome, Robert Weber, Transit Administrator, City of Sedona.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. Thanks for having me. Good morning. We might get some snow here, so I appreciated that safety minute. Remind me what I'm supposed to do. Am I able to share my screen at this point?
Yes, you should be able to.
Okay. Give me just a second here. I'll get queued up. And let's see. Hang on just a second. Let me get to slideshow. And did that come up okay for everybody?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, we're good. Yeah, I'm going to run through. I think I have about 20 minutes. I'm going to run through this real quick, but feel free to stop me if you have any questions. Let's see, did I skip a slide? No, this is my opening slide. So the public transit project in Sedona is really just part of a much larger project called Sedona in Motion. And I need to go back a slide. So Sedona in Motion is basically, it dovetails off of Sedona's transportation master plan. And without going into a whole lot of detail, it basically covers about 14 strategies to improve traffic congestion, overall connectivity for vehicles, which of course, part of those solutions is going to be transit, making the community more bike friendly and pedestrian safe, to try to help to improve some of our traffic issues that have continued to get worse, frankly, over the last several years. So public transit is called officially SIM Project 7 and 8. 7 is for tourists, public transit for tourists, and 8 is public transit that's more centered on our residents. So as part of that, the Sedona Area Transit Implementation Plan was published in January of 2020. It was about a 2.5-year study down here in Sedona that they had completed, which documented at that point about 65% of Sedona residents were supportive of public transit. The plan itself, I won't go into a whole lot of detail, but basically it's a 10-year plan, 4-phase plan, which at the end of it, we would have an extensive trailhead shuttle network, fixed route, paratransit network, potentially regional services reaching out to the VOC and beyond. Again, about a 10-year plan, 4 phases. We're really up in year 1 on the phase. So long story short, the consultants finished their work, packed their bags, left town. We're great. I didn't actually start with the city until January of 2021. A little bit about me real quick. Prior to starting with the city of Sedona as their transit administrator, I was with Monterey Salinas Transit, Monterey, California, for 20 years. I retired as their chief operating officer in January of 2021 and had been talking with the city of Sedona about coming here to help them start a transit system. So I landed here, like I said, early January. And we went on from there. So the consultants finished up their plan. Everybody's happy. We had a great plan. But what the consultants could not have anticipated was that a worldwide pandemic essentially would drive visitation up by about 35% to public lands. And that's exactly what happened here in Sedona. These are actual shots of spring break, I want to say in 2020. We had significant public safety issues. We had pedestrians on roadways that simply weren't designed for them, limited line of sight, fast-moving cars, distracted drivers, distracted pedestrians, not a good formula. We had residents up in arms, and rightfully so. They couldn't access their homes. There was significant damage being caused to the homes. The city was redeploying its limited resources, police, public works, to try to manage this. And it really was just not manageable. We had extensive, like I said, an extensive increase in visitation during the pandemic, during the height of the pandemic. But what we found is as the pandemic has ebbed and flowed, that visitation is sustained and it's continuing. One popular theory is that the pandemic itself, it exposed an entirely new generation in our country to public lands. And they really liked it, and they're here to stay, and they keep coming back in increasing numbers. And that's what we're seeing here. So that was the situation that I walked into in January of 2021. City manager asked me, even though we're not supposed to be deploying those trailhead shuttles for 5 years, do you think we could move that to the front burner? And if so, could we possibly deploy by next spring? So that gave me what, just about 13, 14 months. So I said, yeah, let's give it a shot. So we dug in. We had nothing. We had no vehicles. We had no contractor. We had no branding. We had no operating base. We had nothing. So over the next 15 months, we were able to pull all that together. And long story short, we deployed the first phase of the Sedona Shuttle. The Sedona Shuttle is the brand for Sedona's transit system. I'm just going over this first part because this is what we have on the road and operational. So in March, on March 24th, we launched 4 routes, lines 11, 12, 14, and 15, all with specific objectives to target some of these most heavily impacted trailheads. Simultaneously, we worked with the U.S. Forest Service in closing some of the trailhead parking lots, which were at the trailheads. I said, look, this is not going to be successful if people still think they can drive up there and park. We have got to, put firm parking restrictions in for this to be successful. That was quite a heavy lift for the Forest Service, just to shut those parking lots, because their mission, of course, is to provide access to public lands while attempting to protect it. So they had to do an extensive public scoping. They had to run that all the way up to Washington. They had to have various levels within the Forest Service, environmental scientists, everything, a very complicated process before we could get an answer on the parking lot situation. We finally did. They agreed to shut down 2 of these most heavily impacted lots. And then we deployed the services March 24th. We're just using standard cutaways, 25-foot, 20-seated passengers. But this is a result as of last Sunday for these 4 little routes. It's done about 166,000 passenger boardings in an actual 134 days of operation, because we only operate those Thursday through Sunday. We will be operating daily through spring break, and then we'll be operating, obviously during some of the major holidays, Labor Day, Memorial Day, 4th of July, etc. So we're averaging at about just over 1,200 passengers per day for our first step into public transit here. And in contrast, when I pull up the 2018 NTD numbers for all of the Arizona rural providers, and I like the 2018 numbers because that's pre-COVID operation. It really shows all of these services operating back in the heyday before COVID came along and cut the boardings in half for many of these providers. So, Show Low at that point was apparently the most successful rural transit provider in Arizona. It looks like for 2018, they logged just over 180,000 boardings. We're on track to do about 270,000 boardings for the first year, assuming that our average holds. So not a bad start. We do have some issues like any other transit system. We have an underperforming line and we're working on that. But I've got my eye more on what's next. Somebody's got to do it. So that's what I'm doing. So the other thing we wanted to launch simultaneously with that Trailhead shuttle service back in March was our microtransit on-demand service, which we've named the Sedona Shuttle Connect. I have been hung up on vehicle procurement now for as long as I can remember, and we're still there. I don't think I need to tell this group about what's going on with vehicles, but this is hung up, this second deployment that I would like to get on the road ASAP. Basically, I know that Mountain Lion has deployed a microtransit service. So you all are pretty familiar with these. Basically, what you're looking at there is the anticipated service zone for the Sedona Shuttle Connect, app-based, shared ride service, etc. We're hoping to get this service deployed by second quarter of 2023. If my crystal ball ever clears up on vehicles, that's where we will hope to be. It looks like it's starting to, we're starting to move the needle and actually getting some pricing off the state contract on some of the vehicles we're looking at. Real quickly, everything I've just talked about here is this short range transit planning. Really, my eye is on the long range stuff. We've finished environmental. We've finished the NEPA, the environmental justice, site selection, all that for our maintenance and operations facility. This would be located just outside of town on 89A near our wastewater treatment plant. We already own this land. We're looking at about a 6-acre footprint, about a $20 million build, which would take us out about 50 years. Couple of other things about this site is the idea that this would be a regional maintenance facility, not just supporting the city of Sedona. Currently, Cottonwood's in the same boat. They do not have a maintenance facility dedicated to their fleet. They're using an outside vendor in Camp Verde. They're paying full retail on parts, labor. Their buses are sitting behind semis and they get to them when they can get to them. Not a really good situation for them either. So they're very supportive of this. This facility, if built, would support Cottonwood Transit, Sedona Transit, and also our local MPO, the Verde Valley Caregivers, who right now are our 5310 recipient, and they're transporting all of our elderly disabled, providing them with door-to-door service. So the idea is that this facility would support the maintenance requirements for all of those transit providers, but also as a backup for the Yavapai Apache Nation Transit, who also are in the same boat, and they're using a local provider that's closer to them. It's in Camp Verde, but same situation. They're paying full retail, and their buses get hung up behind commercial vehicles, and our worked on as the technicians can get to them. So we can offer that also to our friends over at the nation. So
Robert,
that is,
Robert.
yes, sir.
Yeah, excuse me. This is fascinating and congratulations. And I just want to let you know, if you could do about 5 more minutes, we do have a lot of other things on the agenda.
Sure. Well, I can just stop there if you'd like and answer any questions. I mean, there's more, but
Okay, if that works for you.
yeah, it works for me.
Are there questions from the TAC? Please raise your hand if you can. I don't know if I can see everyone, so you can just jump in. There we go. That's helpful. Yeah, I can see everyone, so please raise your hand if you have a question or comment for Robert. Greg Clifton.
Thank you. This is just a comment. I wanted to thank you for this presentation. Great information, and we've been hearing about the trailhead shuttles. So it's really good to get this level of information and know all the details. Thanks for putting this together for us.
No problem.
Other questions or comments? Jillian.
Where are the parking sites for the shuttle to the trailheads?
Yeah,
How
we
are
have
they being
two.
integrated.
Right, we have 2 park and ride locations that we established just for this program. One is on 179 on SR 179 corridor, and one's at the Posse Grounds Park. If you go to sedonashuttle.com, the main page will show you the map along with those locations.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments for Robert? Well, Robert, I want to say congratulations. The ridership numbers are impressive. I think the vehicles look great. I would be curious if you know what some of the benchmarks like passengers per hour and operating cost per hour are. Those are interesting metrics for me. Do you have that information handy, or could you send it out after this meeting?
Yeah, I have a dashboard that has all of that. You know, the real short, the productivity is I would have been happy if I got 20 passengers per hour. In our slow months, we're getting 25 passengers per hour. I've got one route that's doing 65 passengers per hour. It's just so
Wow.
I'm pretty happy there. Operating costs are going to be high because we're on a fixed variable cost with MV. So that fixed cost is driving up our operating costs until we buy more hours. It's an economy of scale that number will start to come down. But I can certainly send Heather the dashboard and she can share that with you guys.
Great, thank you. And congratulations and thank you again. And also thank you for understanding the brevity here and our need to move on to some other items.
Oh, no problem. I get it.
All right. With that, I'm going to move on to the next item, discussion and review of the draft board business agenda. 7A, discussion and action items. The first item is approve the updated strategic plan and adopt the 12 to 18-month work plan. Heather.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the Transit Advisory Committee. I'm going to, there's only a couple of us here in the Vera room, so I'm going to stay seated for this presentation. This is a follow-up item to the October strategic advance in which we sought direction from the board and TAC on what we should do next with our 2020 to 2025 strategic plan, as we had some concerns with the wording of a couple of the objectives, and most of the work plan items were either complete or out of date. And so what I have for you to review today in presentation format is an update to the strategic plan questions or objectives, I apologize, and the proposed 12 to 18-month work plan that we will be presenting to the Board of Directors for consideration. So within the strategic plan itself, we are not recommending any changes to the 6 goals that are listed within that plan. And I apologize, I should have thought to include the strategic plan in the packets, and I did not. Under the first goal, which is service excellence, you can see on the screen that we are recommending we strike the language customer first in this objective, because this is really about capital. And I think the customer first service delivery is what we're focusing on when we talk about how we deliver service. It's about the customer and the customer needs. It did not seem to fit well in this sentence, and so we are recommending that the board consider striking it, but we would keep the overall objective of investing in capital to improve efficiencies in infrastructure to enhance service delivery. I'll pause there. That is the only change we are recommending to the strategic plan itself before I jump into the work plan items. I don't see any hands or comments. Mr. Chairman, is it okay if I move on?
Please, thank you.
So the 12 to 18-month work plan, what we have done is develop specific tasks within each of the goals and specific objectives. So you can see on the screen here, service excellence is our first goal, and the statements in blue are the objectives, and then the items in bullet underneath are the measurements or the task that we are going to use for each of these objectives. So for the purpose of delivering service enhancements that are in line with our 5-year transit plan and to make transit an attractive mode option, our work plan items are completing Flagstaff in Motion and identifying a path for funding and optimizing service delivery on the NAU campus to ensure the efficient use of vehicles and limit crush loads. Under the second objective of this goal, investing in capital to improve efficiencies and infrastructure for service delivery, we have the work plan items of constructing phase 1 of the Downtown Connection Center, considering missing or incomplete bus stop grant so that we can fund new bus stops and needed upgrades per our transit guidelines, plan for fleet expansion and maintenance through the implementation of the CASPAR master plan that's going to be presented on today's agenda, develop a plan for Phoenix Avenue and Milton improvements that are supported by permitting jurisdictions. One example of that is the light needed for the Downtown Connection Center. Implement bus only lanes as part of the Beulah realignment project with the city of Flagstaff. I have a delay on my slide. What am I doing wrong? Oh, did it go? No. Let me make sure it's. Did the mouse move? Oh, let me try. I'll just do that one and then see if it works. Oh, go back one now. I think it read both of our clicks. Sorry, go back one. Yeah, go back one.
Maybe battery, I'll check that.
Okay, thanks. Sorry about that. Technology's fun. And the last objective under goal one of service excellence, develop and improve community partnerships and interagency relationships to enhance transit and improve our ability to meet community needs and deliver our public transit services. And the proposed work plan items include coordination with NACOG and other regional transit providers in supporting regional transit service needs, proposing code and engineering standard amendments to the city of Flagstaff to better integrate transit into development projects, similar to the work we're doing with Northern Arizona Healthcare, and seek new and update existing partner agreements to reflect our current conditions and cost structures. So I'll pause for goal one and just see if there's any thoughts or feedback on the work plan items we are proposing for this goal. All right, hearing none, I'll move on to goal two. She's handing me the mouse. Hang on. Goal 2 is stewardship of resources. And so we have 2 objectives under this goal: be exemplary at supporting community goals towards environmental sustainability. Some of the action items we're proposing: continue to follow the board adopted zero emission bus plan and implement best practice strategies to transition to that fleet. Attain the Coconino County Sustainable Building Certification in the development of all new facilities, and educate staff on how they can participate and support community through personal choices like using transit and carpooling, essentially asking staff to be role models for our community. And the second objective under this goal is to maintain our facilities and equipment to demonstrate our pride and service excellence and maximize the useful life. The work plan items to support this objective are to maintain our public image, including rewrapping our buses, pursue opportunities and partnerships to repurpose, donate, and dispose of assets at end of life, continue to collect and maintain data for baseline reporting of corrective and preventative maintenance of rolling stock and fixed assets. This was recently discussed as we reviewed our transit asset management plan. And then evaluate bus stop conditions using the TAM scoring criteria. And of course, it would result in a work plan to improve those conditions. Again, I'll pause to see if there's any comments on the work plan items associated with goal 2. Okay. Okay, goal 3, investing in mountain lane workforce. We again have 3 objectives, and this will carry over to 2 separate slides. So the first objective is to expand and enhance employee training and development. So the work plan items: develop a succession plan that identifies training and development opportunities to staff that want to grow within Mountain Line. Create a training program that focuses on all staff at Mountain Line with specific training topics for each division or department. Develop part-time training staff to be utilized when needed and to support existing trainers. Develop standard operating procedures for a wide variety of functions and activities, ensuring all staff are performing job duties at the same standard and creating clear expectations. And to develop an outreach plan to address employee development, including what we offer in the way of tuition assistance, training time, course options available, and personal growth. Under the second objective of evaluating operational structure to find efficiencies in service delivery and reduce cost, we have the development of part-time employee opportunities. This is attracting staff that are not seeking full-time jobs. God bless you, Kate. Modify the guaranteed work hours for full-time employees. We do have a date on this one, and the goal is to ensure that staff who only want to work 30 hours have that opportunity. And then the third goal under this section, the third objective under this goal, is to develop a workplace culture that supports employee development and work-life balance. So this includes exploring new health and benefit options that might be offered to part-time staff, also looking at what other insurance or insurance pools are available to improve access to care and or reduce employee cost. Rejuvenate the job shadowing and cross-training program. The goal here is to really expand the amount of respect and understanding our employees have for each other and the varying difficulty of different jobs in our agency. Develop an employee engagement plan to ensure diverse groups of employees are included in shared decision-making. We've used this most recently by asking for feedback on the DCC, including them in those drawings and those meetings. And then developing employee engagement materials about the contributions that they themselves are making to the community by working for transit. So these are the 3 objectives and the work plan items for investing in our workforce. And I'll pause again to see if there's feedback.
Okay. Thank you, Heather. And I am going to open it up. I want to let everybody on the TAC know my camera went out. And the only way for me to get it back is to reboot my computer. I'm not going to do that so I can continue to hear, but I apologize for not being visible on the screen. Are there questions or comments for Heather?
Actually, Mr. Chairman, I have 3 more goals to go over.
Okay.
All right, so goal 4 is our enhanced safety culture with objectives. 3 sets of objectives, developing a holistic safety plan that guides us. These work plan items are to create a strong safety culture throughout Mountain Lion by ensuring all staff are included in safety and health programs. Partnering with Coconino County Health and Human Services to train staff on Narcan delivery and introduce Narcan into our first aid kits if possible. Continue to partner with Coconino County Emergency Services and the EOC regarding evacuation needs and how Mountain Lion can assist. And then presenting updated rider suspension policies to the board that are relevant to the service delivery we are attempting in the community. The second objective is to manage transportation facilities and amenities to support a safe environment for staff and customers. So this includes participating and partnering with our staff and building designers to identify potential hazards as we develop the Downtown Connection Center, and working with staff, designers, and partners to identify hazards in the development of the CDL training and testing course in partnership with Northern Arizona University. Continuing with that second objective, we have implement new and update existing duress procedures. So those are our emergency alarms here in the building. Do staff know what to do when those go off? Implement new procedures for determining working conditions, exposures to risk and physical dangers within our jobs. And then implementing new procedures for reporting, mitigating, and determining root cause of workplace injuries. And the third objective is to utilize available and emergent technology to enhance existing and future fleet, optimizing safety for all. This will include partnering with our local first responders regarding electric buses and how we ensure everyone is safe when there are failures or incidents involving those, upgrading the air filtration system on our vehicles, basically scrubbing the air to ensure a safer environment for staff and riders, and evaluating the driver barrier to improve the conditions, reduce the concerns of our staff, and continue to provide an accepted solution for both riders and drivers. And then implement an improved customer comment and complaint system that reduces redundancy of manual entry by our staff. I'll just keep rolling unless I see a hand. Goal 5 is community engagement, and we have 2 objectives for this goal. The first is ensure active participation from a supportive network of stakeholders. The work plan items are to develop a strategy to encourage influential key stakeholders to ride transit. So most recently, I issued a challenge to use transit to come to our October advance. You all will see more of that type of activity coming from us, as we'd love to see you on the bus. Conduct a minimum of 6 community presentations each year, and engage community leaders and messages to the public regarding Mountain Lion's contribution to community goals like affordable housing and sustainability. And then of course we will.
Yeah, excuse me. I do see that Michelle James has her hand up and Carol Covington did a few minutes ago. Michelle?
Sure, I just have a quick question of clarification, Heather, and that's on goal 4, objective number 1. It talked about Narcan being available on the buses, and I wasn't clear from what you said whether they will be available or they possibly will be available on the buses.
I think that's something we need to evaluate and determine still. It is a desire for us to have that available, but it will be dependent upon the training that we can get to our staff on how to utilize that,
Okay.
and ensure that we have the support of Health and Human Services with making that change.
Great, good. Okay, thank you. I'm glad you're explaining.
Thank you.
And Carol, did you have a comment or question?
I did. A couple of comments. One was actually in reference to the Narcan line, which said for possible use, and I'm thinking that that's superfluous, probably because if you're going to have Narcan, it's obviously there for possible use. But moving back further, create a stronger, no, develop a holistic safety plan. Nope, that's not it. It was prior to that. It was develop a work environment, a workplace that supports employee development and work-life balance. To me, that sounds like we don't have that now, but we're going to develop it. And so I thought perhaps the wording that you might consider would be to enhance the workplace culture or something like that. So it doesn't sound like we're flat out, we don't have it. And so we want to work towards that. There was one other comment that was earlier on, which I had talking about pride of something, and to me that sounded awkward. I'm not sure that a work plan is there to support a sense of pride, but rather to demonstrate your commitment to something. And I can't remember where it was, but forgive me, I would have marked it up if I'd had a copy, but I just have to wing it. Anyway, those are my comments.
I appreciate them. I will find that language. I'm sure I know which one you are speaking about. And I will make sure that we internally discuss those before this goes to the board of directors. I appreciate that, Carol. So going back to, we only have one objective to review and then one last goal. Sorry, I'm using the scroll button. I'm getting ahead of myself. So the last objective under community engagement is to increase the community awareness of Mountain Line's value to the community. And that we plan to do that through engagement in 10 community events each year. Develop a plan to educate the community about the role transit plays in supporting the wide variety of community goals like affordable housing, congestion relief, etc. And conduct robust project-related outreach. The DCC is a great example of our new approach to some of that outreach. And then the education campaign on Mountain Line's fare options, including benefit of mobile ticketing and fare capping. The last goal is about fiscal responsibility with 3 objectives: ensuring a sustainable financial future through long-term financial planning. And we have 4 different ways that we plan to support that objective. Refine the 10-year capital plan to clarify necessary projects post downtown connection center build out and identify funding. Continue to invest in our workforce with updated compensation plans to remain competitive at attracting staff with the changing cost of living locally. Developing benefit plan and budget for more flexible workforce, and continuing to pursue performance indicators necessary to maintain increased federal operating funds. Under the second objective, diversify funding sources to reduce dependency on federal funding for ongoing operations. The work plan items associated with that are engage city and community partners to promote the EcoPass program. That's the business pass program. Retain our existing participants by confirming the value in conducting outreach and or travel training to enhance participation, and the connection of health benefits to the use of transit and the pursuit of an EcoPass through the Northern Arizona Public Employee Benefit Trust as part of Health and Wellness Program. That benefit trust is participated in by many of the public employers in our area. And the last couple of things here is to identify new and expanded revenue sources for expansion of routes and services, develop options to replace fares with alternative revenue sources, and implement an 18-month pilot program for K through 12 or college students to study the impact of zero fare on increased transit use. And then the last objective under this goal is to expand Mountain Line revenue resources to allow for full implementation of the updated 5-year plan, the capital plan, and the projected increase of cost for providing service. That includes research and develop an implementation plan in coordination with the creative local match plan that Metro Plan is working on to diversify the sources of funding from the city of Flagstaff and other public partners, and then to coordinate and develop an implementation with the state transit peers on long-term state legislation changes to restore and or establish statewide transit funding. And with that, that concludes the proposed work plan items that we will be presenting to the board. I'm happy to send this out to you so that you can review it. I know I learned better through reading it myself, so I'm happy to share that with you. And I apologize it was not in the packet. We'll get that to you so you have time to review before the board meeting, because we will be asking the board to approve that revised strategic plan with additional consideration of Carol's comments, and then adopt the 12 to 18 month work plan as reviewed.
Thank you, Heather. Michelle, is that a hands up or a thumbs up? Looks like a thumbs up.
That was a thumbs up. I would love to see a copy of it sent to me. Thanks.
Yes, of course.
Okay. Questions or comments for Heather? Heather, I understand what you need from this group is just feedback you received some and had questions throughout. Is there anything else you need from us at this time?
No, I thank you for listening and appreciate the feedback given. I'll get that report out to you.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to proposed service changes for January 2023. Busy Collins.
Yes, thank you, Chairman, members of the Transit Advisory Committee. I'm here to talk about proposed service changes in January. So we regularly look at opportunities and challenges in service planning meetings throughout the year. A few items came up that we are bringing to the board for adoption. And really it came from feedback from operators, hearing that we need to capitalize on class breaks. So really the changes we're proposing is to Route 10, which goes through NAU campus. And so we did hear from operators that we need to capitalize on the NAU class breaks when crush loads are experienced, and also consider platooning some of our buses during this time. We also got feedback from operators that they're not sure that 5 buses are necessarily needed throughout the full day that we currently run peak service on Route 10, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. And there were opportunities to maybe get more strategic on how we put that service out. And then another impetus for this item was operator shortage. So as you all are well aware, we've been in a staffing shortage for over a year now. We've been drilling into ridership on all of our routes to really target where ridership is and what makes the most sense for any service that we do put out, especially in the triage service reduction plan component. And so really this was another impetus to this proposed change that we're looking at ridership on all of our routes. Route 10 was one of those, and just analyzing that ridership. Next slide, please, Rhonda. And one more thing to mention is that we have not been at our full peak service for Route 10 for over a year, basically since the triage service plan knocked us back down, about a year ago, COVID, et cetera. So it's been a long time since we've actually had our advertised service on Route 10 with the full 5 buses. And so pictured here, there's the route. Route 10 is that maroon route on the right, goes from downtown Connection Center through NAU campus over to Woodlands Village, looping back around all the student housing. It's a huge ridership route for us. It's a really big deal. So we take this very seriously, that we don't want to impact our riders. We really are doing this to make sure that we're capitalizing on when and where ridership is. And so the results of the Route 10 analysis were that Friday has lower ridership due to shorter crush load period compared to Monday through Thursday, and just fewer classes in general. And Route 10 is the most buses in service currently, like I mentioned, from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., but actual peak ridership is only from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Monday through Thursday, and really 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. on Friday. And again, it's really between the classes, it's pulsing as those classes come out. Next slide, please, Rhonda. And so based on these results, staff is recommending the following schedule changes to Route 10 only. So first, Route 10 would have a Monday through Thursday schedule that differs from Friday. As you can see here, there's the 2 columns on the right is kind of breaking up Monday through Friday into those 2 chunks. And second, we're looking at bus levels of service changing to match ridership peaks and troughs. And so pictured here in the light orange is the actual changes that we're proposing. So you can see We currently have Monday through Friday service. It all matches. Again, we're not actually operating at this level. We're still at a reduced service level per the service reduction plan. So we're more like 4 buses from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. right now, 2 buses off peak times. And what we're proposing is to, on Monday through Thursday, just reduce the span of time that we have 5 buses from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. and then stair step it down in the afternoon. We still see some good ridership in the afternoon. However, the 7 and 9 a.m. Really just doesn't warrant many more buses than 2. And then proposed on Friday, you can see there that we have the buses kind of ramp up to that 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. peak period on Friday, and then ramps back down to the off-peak period at 6 p.m. Next slide, please, Rhonda. So this is a 10% reduction in annual revenue hours and miles. However, our Title VI public comment threshold is 25%. So it does not meet that, and that only qualifies for revenue hours. Hence, so I'm putting it here. And we do, while it has some reduction in hours, there is some cost savings associated with that. However, it's really like the main purpose is to better capitalize on ridership on Route 10, when and where it's happening, and then best use our staff's time to best serve that riding public around Route 10. There are some potential impacts to ridership if we just do a flat raw results. We do see about 100,000 reduced trips on Route 10. However, we do see ridership patterns changing according to this. We're really working to test platooning concept. So having more buses going out during those class breaks and really capitalizing on the class breaks, so we have buses all around campus right then. And then we'll be monitoring it as well. So we don't anticipate that true raw ridership decrease, but we did look at our STIC funding, the small transit intensive cities funding, that does rely on some of these metrics, the revenue hours, the ridership, et cetera. We don't see that being impacted. So that's like another major relief for staff. We would not be recommending this if it drastically impacted our ridership stats and STIC funding. Next slide, please, Rhonda. And so if the board does approve, staff would begin updating printed materials. We've already started doing that in the background with other things unrelated to Route 10. So the ride guide just needs to be updated, our shelter posters would be updated, et cetera. And then we would have communications and messaging early January and implementation on January 16th of next year. That coincides with when we are scheduled to resume peak service on Route 10, coinciding with start of spring semester at NAU. So that's all I have, and we are asking for the board to approve this. I would love to hear any questions, comments, or if there's any data points I'm missing that I need to be bringing to the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Busy. Aaron, your hand is up.
I just want to kind of validate, for years, Friday numbers have been lower, considerably lower than Monday through Thursday. So that is, we try to get drivers who want to do 410s Monday through Thursday, because that is when the bulk of ridership, and there's a huge drop on Fridays. So I think that is very smart. And I would agree the peak hours are not as lengthy. I'll be curious to see how the platooning goes.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
but it's a good idea. I just want, from an NAU perspective, that NAU thinks it's a good plan.
Absolutely. Thank you, Erin.
Or that I think it's a good plan. I guess I can't speak for the whole university, but.
Thank you, Aaron. Other questions or comments for Busy? Busy, I have one. Define platooning for me again, please?
Yeah. So the concept we're looking at is, could we have a couple buses? So say we have 5 buses that we want to put 5 buses in service, and we want to platoon 3 of those. So the concept we're playing around with is, could we have a couple buses running on a very strict schedule, like every 40 minutes, like it does currently. And then some of those remaining buses, like 2 or 3 buses, really running in line, not a full line, not bumper to bumper, but just spacing them out more, that they, as soon as class break begins on campus, we have at least a few buses strategically placed throughout the campus that we are running, and we are basically on campus, buses maybe a little closer together than our current spacing. And just capitalizing on that class break. So making sure we got buses kind of running through campus, not bumper to bumper, but at least we're in the right locations. We're on campus. Hopefully that helps. Sorry. Does that help answer your question, Miles?
It does. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks.
All right, I'm not seeing other hands up. One thing I noticed in your staff report, you mentioned you want to capitalize on crush loads and make sure you've got, or optimize, make sure you have enough service there. But when I look at your service changes, you're only suggesting reducing service and other times, not increasing service crush load times. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so we're currently, between NAU shuttle system and Mountain Line buses, we got a lot of buses out there. I can't imagine actually adding another bus to the NAU campus to increase over 5. It's an option, but I just don't really see the return on investment with additional buses. So if we can do the platooning and maybe we're really capitalizing each of those 60-foot articulated buses are on campus. They're grabbing as many people that need to get somewhere during that time. I think that's the best use of our resources rather than adding just another like 6th or 7th bus into the service and having that regular intervals that we're currently operating at. I just don't think it's a better return on investment than what is proposed.
Okay. And then I would like to see monthly ridership track. So what's the ridership now by hour when you make these changes? And then as you do it, it'd be interesting to see how it shifted, those metrics again.
Absolutely. Yes. We'll be bringing back a report, updating board and TAC on if we're achieving the goals that we set out to achieve. How are we doing? What does that look like? We'll be circling back. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm not seeing other comments. Unless there's more from staff, then I'm going to move on to, yes?
No, nothing for me. Thank you.
Okay. Let's move on to the next item, CASPAR headquarters master plan adoption. Anne.
Thank you, Chair Milbeck, members of TAC, Ann Dunno, Capital Project Manager. For this item, I am seeking a board adoption of the CASPAR headquarters master plan. Next slide, please, Rhonda. So just a little bit of background. The goal of this project was to maximize the use of the Mountain Line properties here at CASPAR for fleet storage and maintenance. As you're all aware, there is, with the DCC opening in a few years, there's relocation of staff to downtown that frees up some space here. And then we just took the opportunity to really look at how can we maximize our square footage on this property. And this is a 20-year plan. So we did our best crystal ball to forecast staff numbers and fleet numbers over the next 20 years. And with the results of the master plan, we looked at several concepts, and we looked at them back actually in April and did get board feedback at the time that concept A was looking really good. So we worked on kind of refining that a little bit over the last few months with some resilience and kind of operations and maintenance costs, and just kind of double checking everything's going to fit for our 20-year plan. And so bringing this forward with, yes, concept A meets all of those needs. And our first component that, of course, you're probably aware of, we're installing some fast charging here at CASPAR to support our transition to electric fleet. That should be happening next year with the installation of 1 pantograph. Then we're also, our most immediate need is really for our maintenance facilities. It's a very small, undersized 2-bay facility that our articulated buses stick out of the garage. And so we are looking to develop a maintenance facility here, as we call it phase 1. And then phase 2 would actually be triggered when we can no longer essentially fit the fleet numbers we have currently with the ability to grow an additional 2 buses after our current fleet. That kind of triggers that need for an ideal condition where we'd have a new bus storage facility. And phase 2, we're able to fit that on this property as well. We did look at the vacant land that Mountain Line owns just to the northeast of the developed location. And we did look at it for transit and identified that it was technically not feasible from a transit use perspective for bus storage or maintenance, or a lot of technical and challenges. There was also some relational components related to the developing right up next to the neighborhood. And then really the costs were very cost prohibitive. So the recommendation from the plan is to dispose of the Linda Vista property, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Next slide, please, Rhonda. So a little bit about what Concept A is. What you're looking at is our existing facility, and phase 1 that's hatched is actually, we call Shop 0. Phase 1, which would build a maintenance, would actually demolish this Shop 0 and install the maintenance bays. And then phase 2 would ultimately demolish the administrative side of the building and then create the bus storage. Next slide, Rhonda. So you can kind of see here with Concept A phase 1, we have the ability to fit in essentially 6 bays, 3 aisles, maintenance bay facility that would meet our needs for the long term. Next slide, Rhonda. As part of that maintenance bay, we'd have a mezzanine. We'd be able to get our resilience components. We need we'll have to put a generator in to help support our long-term needs for electrification. So that kind of fits that component in. Next slide, please, Rhonda. And then with this reconfiguration of the property, there is looking at a parking on the above the roof, essentially, and that potentially could be developed really with phase 2, depending on what our parking needs are at this spot once the downtown connection center is opened. Next slide, please, Rhonda. And then this is phase 2, which is the bus storage that does fit our long-term needs of, we projected for 2043, definite crystal ball here, of having essentially 52 fixed route buses, 10 articulated, and 42 standard buses. So between our existing Shop 3 that you're all familiar with, and then this new facility, we would be able to house those. Next slide, Rhonda. As part of that too, with the bus storage, we would have, some needs for some office type space for, ops and facility staff that would actually still work out of this building. And so that would be located kind of above. Next slide, please, Rhonda. And then with that too, that would also be a component of parking, which again, could actually capture the parking from originally from the phase 1. So it could be a parking deck. Next slide, Rhonda. And you can kind of see this is just a cross section. It all kind of fits neatly in a sort of a Lego-like fashion. And we could kind of fit these components with the priority being the maintenance facility. But then we could they would all work together and they'd be planned together. Next slide, please, Rhonda. So a little bit about where we're going with this is, having this plan identified with enough detail, with enough costs, gives us really good information for grant applications. And we're currently, we did put in a grant application for phase 1 of the maintenance facility for design, and we haven't heard back yet. So we're waiting for that. If we are successful, we'd actually be able to issue a task order to our current the engineering group that was hired for the CASPAR master plan. It's a long-term contract. And so the efficiencies of that, we're able to continue working, issue a new task order, and to do our NEPA and final design of the maintenance facility, which then really sets us up to be more successful for a construction grant. Some other components of the recommendations related to the Linda Vista property is to pursue a lot line modification. So there is the potential for a road extension of Linda Vista through that vacant land. And the proposal would be to modify our parcels so that it's essentially the lot line for the vacant land would be the southerly edge of that property, the right of way of that future road and or a driveway. But that would actually keep a tiny little portion of that property now that would become part of the middle property where shop 3 is, that we could utilize for resources and just be able to utilize that component, because it's not going to help that other property with the development. And then related to Linda Vista, the recommendation is to put that property up for sale, disposition, and that would go to the board for a decision in early 2023. But we would pursue the lot line ideally before that, so we kind of set ourselves up for a sale if that was the direction from the board. Next slide, please, Rhonda. And with that, I welcome any questions or comments.
Questions or comments for Ann? Aaron?
So after I'm getting through my jealousy part, the one thing I would say with the parking on the top, the one thing that I've learned the hard way is make sure that it's different than removing snow from a surface parking. So just keep that in mind, that whatever material is used can have a plow or a bobcat on there, and that either it's weighted or it has a snow chute or something, because we have some structures on campus that the space can be unusable due to some of those issues that weren't thought of during design. But it looks great.
Thank you, Aaron. Definitely welcome. I will mark that down as to remember. Great comment.
Michelle?
Hi, Ann. I have a question about the Linda Vista property, and how many acres are you talking? I'm trying to understand that a bit better.
It's approximately 5 acres, and actually, as you're asking this comment, I will, for the board presentation, bring another slide in to kind of show a little bit more about that Linda Vista property. It's about 5 acres, and the right-of-way, the future right-of-way or public road that would go through that would actually bisect and leave a tiny little trapezoidal area to the south. That's, I don't know, maybe 1,500 square feet. I don't know exactly, but that would then become part of our middle property. And then potentially Mountain Line would sell the remaining property. So it's probably going to be like in the neighborhood of almost 5 acres that would be up for sale. And some clarity on the direction. We have met with the city planning, and this is partly why we came to this recommendation for disposition, is that property is zoned high density residential. So apartments or something like that, housing. Our understanding of the way, the city does not have a priority to build Linda Vista. It is not even in their 20-year plan. And so, this is a development by right. So somebody could come in and all they would need to do is have 2 points of connection. They actually don't need to build a public road to do their development. The only thing the city would be asking is that whatever planned elevations, that everything in the long run would work with a future road that would come through. So there'd be some coordination for that development. Maybe if a development application came forward, the city might want to partner and build the Linda Vista extension as a public road. But that, would be up to the city. And definitely these items are, something we'll be discussing with the board, and, so they can have a full understanding of what their options are. And again, the idea is to really help leverage, and with the sale, to help leverage our local funds for grants, for the capital grants that we've been hearing about. And as you're all aware, our local dollars are very precious to put towards service. And so trying to find funding to help us with leveraging grants is really kind of the objective.
Yeah, I get that. The first thing I thought of when I heard you were going to sell land was, well, could it be used for affordable housing, for instance? But it sounds like it's better to have it for matching grants in terms of transportation. But have you guys thought about that at all?
So the initial, the comments and guidance we got that I received from Heather Domelin and others was, Mountain Line going in and holding on to the land and then acting as a landlord, if you will, and then developing the property, working with the city for affordable housing. It just seemed like that wasn't our highest and best use to get return on the investment that was made with local funds to purchase the land, because there's a lot of work involved. Definitely whoever would come forward. I mean, maybe there's an opportunity that a group comes forward and wants to build affordable housing on there and work with the city. and Mountain Line to purchase the property. I mean, that certainly could be an option.
Yeah, I was thinking something like you would give it to the city and then the city could develop it. Not that you guys would develop it, but it's going to be a monetary decision, probably weighing and balancing things, but thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. And Anne, other questions or comments for Anne? I'm not seeing any hands up. And I do have a couple. One, I have a concern about selling a capital asset and using the money to operate service because it's not a sustainable funding source. And then I'm curious about the history of punching through Linda Vista. I know there was talk years ago about it being direct access and reducing deadhead miles by allowing egress from the existing transit facility right on to Route 66. And I understand this was looked at over the past few years. And I would just ask Heather, perhaps if you could bring back a report on that at a future TAC meeting, so we can get up to speed on what those issues were. So that's one thing. And I'll just say the reason for it is I love the plan that you've got, and there's a lot of moving parts, and it's a very expensive plan. So I would just like to understand the whole situation a little better. And the history on that punch through is interesting to me because it could have impacts on the value of the property you're looking to sell.
Thank you, Chair Malbec. I guess to answer your first question for clarity, the sale of the property would help leverage for a capital project to support our excellent service, essentially. So yeah. I guess it's a little bit indirect, but so it's not selling the property so we can operate service. So I want to make sure that that's, I don't know if that's what you were hinting at, but it's definitely just to use the funds to leverage capital grants, which obviously would then offset, it would free up a little bit more local funds for other needs that we can't necessarily use for capital grants. We have a lot of behind the scenes capital needs, for example, radios and IT needs and things that you just can't get a grant for, but we have to ultimately replace or use local funds. So again, these things start to add up. And so that helps free up, some funds over time to use for those other items behind the scenes. So that's just a little bit of sort of the capital funding component. And maybe try to explain a little bit more about the Caspar intersection project, which I believe you're referring to, which we had a grant in partnership with the city to punch through at Route 66 to drop Caspar Road to allow our buses to quickly get onto the main road. This is going back, would definitely bring back a report, but we got it through final design. We bid it, and it was beyond it was above the budget of the grant. And at the time, the city was unable to come forward and help make up the difference. And so given where we were with other projects and needs, Mountain Line is looking at, is moving those funds to the Downtown Connection Center, which, as you're all aware, is also being challenged, like all projects, with cost escalation. So that is a usable for a busway in the downtown, right in front of the Downtown Connection Center. So that's where those funds are going. And I guess in some ways you're right, Jeff. Ideally, any property that has access to a main road is going to probably increase that value. But at the same time, you have to look at somebody could still do a project on that vacant land and not have to punch down out to the main road. They would just have to connect to Caspar. So there's a couple of things at play there and that would be up to the developer to look at, costs, benefits, in terms of the performance of what they're looking to build at that property. So I don't know if that helps a little bit. on the relationship of the intersection to the development. And I see Heather has her hand up.
It helps a lot. Thank you, Heather.
Yeah, so Jeff, we will definitely bring back a reminder on what we have done with the Caspar intersection, where we left that with the city of Flagstaff. Maybe we can get city staff to even update us on what they have done with the plans, since we did fund it and hand it over to them. And then lastly, I want to talk a little bit about one of the other requirements that Mountain Line is going to have related to the land that we own here at Caspar. So some of the land is indebted to the federal government. It was purchased with federal transit administration funds, which when we dispose of, we will have to pay back. And so right now, I don't have an investment designed to create that funding source that will pay back the federal money. And so the disposition of this vacant land will also assist us in repaying FTA for that land that really we can't use or develop as part of our transit site, and was set aside for Lunda Vista to be pushed through. So that's one other reasoning behind the conversation about disposing of that property and the realignment that Anne touched on briefly in her presentation.
Thank you. All right, if there are no other items, I'm going to move on to the next, which is review the budget process and kick off fiscal year 2024 budget. Heather.
So I am going to present on behalf of Josh Stone, our Management Services Director. He is out of the office this morning, and this will be a very brief presentation. It's meant to remind you of what we do during the budget process as we internally have kicked off our 2024 budget setting calendar. So as in the staff report, the typical timeline is that we do start that process in November/December. In the October advance, we did talk about our financial projections and where they're at. Once we have updated projections from the city of Flagstaff, we will be updating that and bringing it back. And then you can see the other steps here. December, January, those are internal things. Those are internal deadlines for us and steps that we take. Similarly, with some of the January, February, we have to submit to the city of Flagstaff, as one example, our request for funding from them, so they adopt it in their budget, usually in early January. Some of our other partners is later in February. Then we will start our budget outreach to the board of directors and our transit advisory committee with a presentation in February about workforce and the budget required for supporting that workforce. In March, the overall operating budget review, and in April, I skipped one, I think. Sorry. We will be talking about, we have to submit to our partners any revisions to our budget ask and or carryovers. For example, the Downtown Connection Center is budgeted 100% in our 2023 budget. We will be carrying that over to 2024 as there's a reasonable expectation that that will not happen completely in this fiscal year. And then in April, we will also be presenting to the Board of Capital Budget review, and then that leads up to the overall review in May, including the revenues and the adoption request in June. Some of the information that we share as we go through this timeline, get the slide to change, includes the status of our revenues, current and prior year performance measures, including budget to actual reports, projections of revenue and operating changes as percentages, so that you can see really where those line items have changed, review of the employee pay plan and benefit programs, review of our capital programs, including those carryover items, and then in May, again, that summary budget review, evaluation of the changes, and that request to adopt in June. So this opportunity is being presented to you and also the board later this month as just a way to check in and make sure that our process includes the check-in points that you would want to see as our advisory committee and that the board will want to see so that they feel confident in adopting that budget by June, which is required by state law. And that's everything I have on this item, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Questions or comments for Heather? All right, and my understanding is you don't need really anything from the TAC, so thank you for the information.
Yeah.
Moving on to the next item, TAC business or economic development member appointment.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the TAC. Gail Jackson is the current economic development representative to the TAC. She's not present today, but she did submit a letter with the hope of reappointment. She was the only person to submit or respond to our request for a letter of interest for the next term of this position on the TAC. And this position will be effective January 18, 2023. And I just put a copy of her letter. It was in the packet and I just put it here on the screen. But like I said, she was the only person that submitted from, I believe, potentially 8 organizations that we reached out to. So if you have any questions for me, we have the answer those. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Rhonda. Moving on to consider approval of Northern Arizona Healthcare Hospital Service Agreement. Oh, thank you, Rhonda, and also thank you, Gail, for your continued willingness to serve. And then Kate, the next item, Northern Arizona Healthcare Hospital Service Agreement.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the TAC. We've been working with Northern Arizona Healthcare on a service agreement to coincide with their application for zoning and regional plan amendment approvals for the relocation of Flagstaff Medical Center south of town. I know that we've presented on this topic numerous times with different route opportunities and potential partnership with the airport. And so a lot of moving parts as we have tried to explore options. What I will say is NAH's timing has been accelerated. They're looking for approvals to come very quickly. And so we've written the agreement in a way to try to assure that Mountain Line is able to get the funding it needs to support service to the hospital, but also be open to changing parameters as the project moves forward. So Rhonda, if you can go to the next slide. I want to highlight what we think are the key points in the agreement here. We've provided flexibility for the phase of development, which is just an ambulatory center. So the hospital will all be built at once, but it will take about a year longer to build the actual hospital emergency room than it will the components of the ambulatory center. And so NAH is estimating that that's going to open a year early. And so we've provided flexibility to them because that's not the main driver of service. And I'll show you in a minute some of the options that we are exploring with them for that first year approximately. We also have an estimated timeline for when this is going to start. However, the hospital isn't sure when things are going to open. So we're trying to remain flexible for that as well. However, the key timeline option here is that council's ability to require an agreement with Mountain Line or transit is provided as part of the hospital is specifically tied to their zoning approvals. So the zoning approval is going to come much faster than they know the construction of the hospital, et cetera. So that's why we're trying to get this agreement in place now, because once that point passes us, then there's no ability to anything from the hospital by the city of Flagstaff. So that's what's driving the timeline and why some of the language you see may be more vague than you may have expected, but it is trying to assure Mountain Line gets what it needs while providing flexibility with NAH. So in summary, what we're asking for is for them to pay 2/3 of the direct operating cost of the route. And the route would go from the downtown connection center, down Milton, down Beulah to the hospital site. There is an opportunity potentially to extend in the future to the airport. That's something NAH has been interested in. But from Mountain Line's perspective, we really need the city to have bought into that idea and help fund the extension of that service further. So we have language in there that's talking about the potential for extensions and then crediting NAH for any additional revenue that would come in. Our goal here is not to make money off of NAH. Our goal here is to get enough funding that we can provide service to the hospital. While we're asking for 2/3 of the direct operating costs, what we're suggesting we can cover, and we have dug deep into our books to try to figure every penny we have out to help support this. We're suggesting Mountain Line would pay for the capital, so buses, bus replacements, bus stops. We're suggesting the overhead would also be the responsibility of Mountain Line. So we're not looking for them to pay for a portion of my position, portion of Heather's position, really just the direct costs of operating the service. And for the TAC, you may recall several years ago, we adopted a strategic investment plan that identifies exactly which budget lines are direct operating and which budget lines are include the overhead. And so that is very clear. And this has all been shared with NAH. They have all this information. They know which budget lines in particular we're looking at here. I think a key point for the board to understand is that in the agreement, it suggests that we will ask council to put this on the 2024 ballot. It is not Mountain Line's authority to do that, but this is a big ask of NAH. They really want to see if the voters are willing to fund the service. So we've said we're willing to ask council. Again, council's the one who puts an initiative on or a proposition on. And so ultimately we don't have that authority, but we've said we will ask. And then we're trying to tie that into other things we might ask for as well. So a little bit of planning going on there. And then the final one is we've tried to offer them a guarantee that if we were to extend beyond 20-minute service in the future, that wouldn't be their responsibility. So we're anticipating that there will be a lot of associated development around the hospital, which eventually could create a demand for greater than 20-minute service. Maybe we need 15-minute service. Maybe we need 10-minute service. The future of that area has a lot of questions. What we've said to them is that if we choose to go above and beyond the 20-minute service, we will not ask you to fund that because that's not associated with the hospital in and of itself. So I think those are the highlights of the agreement. It's modeled in many ways after our service agreement with Arizona Snow Bowl, and that, you know, every year we present a budget you know, we're looking to recuperate costs. It's all based on that year's annual budget and what the direct costs of service will be. So that it mimics that in a lot of ways. Next slide. Okay, so this was an attachment, and I just wanted to take a moment so that we could talk it through and explain it to you. So what it is in the columns, there's 3 vertical columns there with different options in them. What they are 3 different options for serving the ambulatory center phase. As I mentioned, that opens first. The first one is we just jump right in and do fixed route service, though at 30-minute service, not 20-minute service. The second column is that we could provide a micro transit service from the DCC going along the Milton corridor. So just picking up right along Milton, not deviating far off of it. And then going to 20-minute service when the hospital opens. They're all consistent with 20-minute service once the hospital is open. And the third one is an option where they could provide, or we could provide micro transit only to adjacent stops. And what NAH has asked us is they have said, we just want to pay for our proportional share. We asked them to define that, and they told us that they thought the geographical portion of the extension of the Mountain Line system that's new. So essentially, Mountain Line doesn't operate south of the Walmart, Woodlands Village area right now. So that anything north of that's Mountain Line's responsibility because it's already in our service area. Anything south of that would be NAH's service area. And it's about a 47% Mountain Line responsibility, 53% NAH responsibility if you calculate the numbers that way. What I want to show you, if you look down at the bottom in the gray boxes, lines 35 through 37 that you see, or we've then split out the total costs for a year of service at the ambulatory center, a year of service at the hospital. And you can see those splits, and we see that we're meeting that proportional share as NAH defined it to us, where Mountain Line's really in all three scenarios coming in right around 80% of the cost of operating the service, including capital. So getting the service up and running, buying the buses, buying the bus stops. And in addition, NAH is hovering around that 20% mark. There are some slight differences in, who's taking on a greater share, what the ultimate impact to Mountain Line is. It ranges from $5.2 million to $5.7 million impact to Mountain Line over the 2 years, including the capital. So those are all the options that are on the table and that are then referenced. They're an attachment in the service agreement that are representative of what we're asking for. And then again, it's really in each of the lines, what doesn't change is looking for that 2/3, the direct cost from NAH to pay for the operating portion of it. So that's my very high level outline of what's in the agreement. I think what we're looking for is we wanted to bring this to the board specifically because it is considered controversial in nature, or could be considered controversial in nature by some. And so we wanted to make sure the board had the opportunity to consider the agreement or direct us to make any changes, potentially, like I'm just making things up right now, but if they didn't want us to commit to asking council to put it on a ballot or those sorts of things, that there was the opportunity to do so. The way the language is written currently is that the board would actually adopt it. I think that timing is in question. NAH has told us they want some of this done in November. And so that's why we've written it that way. Depending on where we are come the timing of the board, maybe we're just seeking guidance from them at that point and looking for adoption in the future, or delegating authority to Heather to sign in the future. So a little bit of a moving target there. And I will pause and see if there's any questions.
Okay, questions for Kate? Michelle?
Hi, Kate. Questions. I have two. When you talked about this line that that defined the NAH's proportional share, I lost what that was about. Could you describe that again? And then I have another question after that.
Yeah, they didn't think it was fair to pay for service in the areas where we are already providing services. It was already in our own, basically everything north of Woodlands Village to the DCC is already served by routes 10, 4 and 14, essentially, are all providing some connections in different ways back to the DCC. So they felt like, all they're really asking for with their move is to extend the service territory further south. And so geographically, I think it's, if I recall correctly, I think it's 2.3 miles from Woodlands Village to the new hospital site, and it's 2 miles from Woodlands Village to the DCC. And so if you do that proportional share, it's roughly 50-50 between the two of us, but I think it's really 47-53. With Mountain Line having the 47% share.
Great. Good. Thank you for that explanation. The other question I had was, what if Mountain Line recommends or asks for a tax to be included in the 2024 ballot and it doesn't pass? Does this just continue? Is the language in there tight enough to make sure that happens?
Yes, I believe the language in there says that it will continue until such time as other funding to provide the services.
And other funding is kind of broadly defined. So if you guys find a grant that could do it, or, right, so other funding is broad. Okay. I just worry about, other funding would have to be sufficient to cover the cost. Obviously, that's kind of obvious, but do you need to write that into the contract? I know you guys are good at looking at those details. I just want to make sure everything's really covered in case a tax doesn't pass.
Thank you. I will take that note and I'll go back and look at that language and assure that that's clear.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kate.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions or comments for Kate on this item? Okay, not seeing any. Kate, I have a couple. One, I would like to see, just as one TAC member, operating costs annually as separate from capital. When I look at this spreadsheet, lines 35, 36, and 37, it shows about an 80% match for Mountain Line. And you said it's about operating, but it includes capital. And to me, those are two separate things. And I'd really like to see them broken out to be able to see what NAH's share is from an operating perspective as compared to Mountain Line's share from an operating perspective year over year.
Yeah, I can answer that for you. The language in the agreement is it's 2/3 the operating is NAH's share.
Yeah, which actually is one of my other points. I understand that it's 2/3, and if NAH wants to sign it, I get it. But as I read this, that feels as an agreement to say 2/3 of costs, but not really being clear what those costs are. And with capital being lumped in with operating, to me, I would just like to see more specificity. As one TAC member, that's what would help me. Because it feels like things are somewhat lumped together and then they're used in percentages or fractions rather than tied to exact dollar amounts. And so I'm having a hard time tying out from these spreadsheets exactly, what the costs are going to be.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. I'll double check that the language is clear. Those 2/3 the direct operating, and in year one, just so you know, of the hospital service, the 20-minute fixed route service, it's 1.4 million annually in operating, to give you that total number, but I'll go back and double check that.
Okay. And am I understanding that the actual service level is still undetermined? You've got 3 different possible scenarios for service levels, but you don't know what the service levels will be.
Only for the ambulatory phase. At this point, NAH has said they agree that 20-minute service to the hospital is appropriate level of service. So the question is, for that first year before the hospitals actually open, we've suggested that 30-minute service at that point is fine. We don't need 20-minute service before the hospitals open. Hourly service is very difficult to use. And that's why we've also given the opportunity to look at the microtransit options for the first year. So it's just the first year that's in question. Interestingly enough, the cheapest for Mountain Line is to just start fixed route right away because we're only investing in capital once. If we it's cheaper for NAH in that first year for us to do microtransit. Yes, there's a microtransit option that's cheaper for them, but it costs Mountain Line more ultimately. So that's some of that back and forth of, that first year that we're still looking at.
Sure. Thank you. And then ridership projections on microtransit. I have a lot of questions about that. I know it's beyond the scope of this discussion right now, but it does open a lot of questions for me. What we would expect in terms of ridership with that kind of service.
Microtransit is very hard for us to accurately capture. I think we're not good at projecting it. We do have our platform that runs our microtransit service projects things for us. But outside of that, it's difficult to tell. What I can tell you about the current NAH ridership at the FMC site right now is that they're the 9th and 12th busiest stops in the system. If you don't look at the connection centers or some of those very busy stops on Route 10, that's where they rank in terms of popularity.
Okay, thank you. Michelle, your hand is up again.
Yeah, great, thanks. I had questions about microtransit too, and you may not be able to answer all of them, but I was wondering if, for instance, for the ambulatory center, has a decision been made that who is going to provide, which of these options is going to be implemented? It doesn't sound like it. So, right, okay. So if you guys, if NAH doesn't want to implement it and they'll pay Mountain Line to do it, then you guys will go with the fixed route because it's cheaper for you. Right. And how much more expensive is it for Mountain Line if the hospital decides to do their own microtransit? What's the impact on Mountain Line of that decision? Do you have any dollar figure or anything for that?
I don't have a dollar figure for that, but in the last 6 weeks, NAH has dropped the conversation with us about still doing their own transit system. Which we think is positive because we had a lot of questions about how a separate system would work in terms of fares and, connections, and do they need space at the DCC? And, it just starts to become a lot more complicated and harder for people to use. That could come back if they don't want to sign this agreement or, are unhappy with it. I think that's why at this point we've laid out 3 options to them. I think our preferred, because it's the cheapest is to just get the fixed route going and not spend the additional money. Though I think that we're willing to have the conversations about the 2 micro transit options. They're very interested in the micro transit just to the adjacent stops. So just to the 4 and 14 stops and the Route 10 stops that are nearby.
Yeah.
We don't love that as a service level, because if you're coming from the east side of town, you've got to take a bus from the east side of town to the DCC. Now you've got to take another bus to get to the south part of town. And then you have to wait to hail a micro transit van to get you the rest of the way. So it's not our favorite option, though we are trying to be flexible in light of the bigger picture of serving the hospital about what that first phase looks like.
Okay, great. And then just one point of clarification, is this Exhibit 2 that's referenced in the agreement?
Yes.
Yes, okay, great.
It's meant to show the high level, though there is not a specific number, such as the chair was asking, because it is dependent every year upon what our actual budget is. So we can't project out. I mean, we don't even know when this is starting. So right now, if we were to operate it this year, it would be $1.4 million. But if this hospital is not even opening for 5 years, we really just we can't give them a firm number right now. So that's why it's an example of how we're breaking down costs and who's paying for what types of things, but it is not an actual dollar figure.
Great. And then can I just ask one more question? Has the city seen this? I remember talking to you in the past about how the city kind of needs to be on board with the agreement that's going to happen between NIH and Mountain Line. And I just wondered if they were on board or if that conversation is still ongoing.
They know the high level points and they love this approach, because from their perspective, what they can write in the development agreement is that transit service will be provided in accordance with the service agreement with Mountain Line, and that they can leave that simple on their end and not get into more complicated language or having to enforce things. So they very much like this approach. We have not shared the agreement with them. We were hoping to get comments back from NIH first, though as the timeline approaches, we'll definitely need to get that over to them. I think NIH has had it for about 2 weeks, and they said they'll get a meeting scheduled with us here shortly to respond.
Seems like a great approach, just to let you know. I think it's a good approach as well. And I just don't want Mountain Line to get kind of I don't want there to be any unknown or like hidden costs that Mountain Line has to pay. That's my only concern, but I know you guys know your stuff. So if you've covered all that, then I feel comfortable with it. So from the point of being on the TAC and advising Mountain Line. Thanks.
I think we've covered it all.
Great.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. Any other questions or comments for Kate? All right, very interesting. Good work. And moving on to progress reports. Heather, what do you need from us here?
Just have a couple of quick things to offer as we close out today's meeting. The current events was included in your TAC packet, but I have a couple of things I'd like to draw your attention to. You have received several reports from us over the last 18 months, almost 24 months, about staffing concerns and staffing issues. And I'm very happy to report that we are looking at a class of 10 people. I just got confirmation, 10 people. I'll say it again, 10 people in our operator training class. We've never seen a class that big of operators, and we're very excited. And I really want to express my thanks and congratulations to Jim Wagner, Sam Short, and Sheldon Yazzie, who are tirelessly interviewing and reviewing applicants and getting people on board as quickly as possible. We are interviewing people on Thursday and putting them to work on Friday so that they have a job right away with us while we wait for those training classes, and it's working. So very excited to report. I think we're going to be as close as we have been in a very long time to full-time status operators in time for the spring semester to kick off in January. Karen, who performs as our community services and community relations specialist, recently did 2 off-site demonstrations with our bus at Montessori schools, and she said it was a lot of fun. Yesterday, I think she said she had 45 students on her bus at one time, all elementary age, and they were just so excited to be riding the bus in their little short circle to see how that worked. They each had their own passes and got to tap and everything, and it's fun to create that excitement around transit, and Karen does a fabulous job. Another highlight, Mountain Line is participating in the City of Flagstaff's regional plan kickoff around November 10th. That's important for us to align our 5-year plan with that city effort on the regional plan. We did host a demonstration of our first electric van. So we have had several buses come through the community, but no vans. And so it was exciting to see that technology. It was a Ford Transit vehicle, and start to think about how do we look at our paratransit and microtransit vehicles next in our zero emission transition of our fleet. Excited to report Shop 2 has the necessary outlets to charge those electric buses when they do arrive in the next couple of months. We were concerned that we'd have buses and no way to charge them without taking all of Walmart's charging stations, but excited to report we have that upgrade complete, and my thanks to Ann and Jeremiah for ensuring that work was done. I'd like to share a huge congratulations to Busy Collins, Jeremiah McVicker in our maintenance department, Josh Stone, and Estella. We submitted our annual NTD report, not only on time, but early. That is a huge report to compile data for and submit. It's key to the federal funding that we receive. So appreciate all of their efforts and congratulate them on getting that report submitted. And then I do have a couple of anniversaries to share with you. We have 3 employees that will be celebrating what we call milestone anniversaries here at Mountain Line. Jed's trainer extraordinaire. So very excited to celebrate that 10 years with him. Heather Higgins is our purchasing and contracts officer. So a lot of the things that you see in the background when we talk about procurements and contracts, Heather's doing that work, and she has been with us 5 years now. I'm very thankful for her efforts on all the details that ensure those procurements are done correct and those contracts are processed. And Gavin Holzer, we talked about him a couple months ago. He was recently promoted to mechanic assistant, but he is celebrating his 5th anniversary with Mountain Line, and we're very excited to do that with him. Some other more traditional anniversaries, Mandia, who actually works for Miles at MetroPen, is celebrating her 1st anniversary, as is James Olson, who's in the room here with us today, helping with the TAC for this meeting. Daryl Snyder is a transit operator celebrating his 1st anniversary, as is Joseph Wyatt. And then Clarice Claremont also celebrating her 1st anniversary with Mountain Line. We have a couple more to get through, and one of them is going to look familiar to you. Chris Davis-Gow, we talked about him last month, but he is actually celebrating his 1st anniversary. Started out as operator and was recently promoted to operations supervisor. Greg Mokta works in our facilities department as a facilities technician, celebrating his 2nd anniversary with Mountain Line. Jeremiah Sheward celebrating 3 years as a transit operator. And Danny Barbie, which is Jed's other half in our extraordinary training department, celebrating 6 years. Danny came to us from our operations division as an operator as well. And Kate Morley, deputy general manager, is celebrating her 7th anniversary, and I'm very excited to celebrate that with her. And lastly, Dave MacArthur is celebrating his 8th anniversary with Mountain Line, actually, as an operations supervisor and a key member of supporting our operations team. And lastly, I will close with 2 promotions that were included in the current events. Joseph Tyree and Rachel Scala have been serving as transit operators for Mountain Line and were recently promoted to operations supervisors. So they will join that team of frontline support as soon as we get more trainees trained to take over their driving duties. And with that, Mr. Miles, that is my update on current events.
Thank you, Heather. And congratulations, everyone. And I appreciate the way you recognize your team, Heather. Any questions or comments for Heather before we move on to pretty much wrapping up the meeting? I'm not seeing any hands up, so I'll move to schedule the next meeting date and identify agenda items. Heather.
So the list up is what staff has. We will incorporate the items discussed today, specifically getting an update on a future agenda. It may not happen in January, but a future agenda on the Casper intersection project and how that ended and where it is in our priorities. But if you have comments, feedback on other items that I may have overlooked or suggestions for future items, please let us know. That certainly is how we came up with the invite to Robert Weber, and it was great to hear all the things that are happening in our neighbor city of Sedona.
Thank you. All right. Well, I thank everyone for being here today. And thank you, Heather, and your team for the great work you're all doing. And unless there are objections, we are adjourned.
Thank you, everyone, for being here.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.